Marc and Andreyko joining me here, Reilly Roundtable. Marc and Andreyko, I want to ask you real quick, what the hell do we need to do for the Friday the 13th franchise? What is your pitch? Give it to me right now.
My pitch for the Friday the 13th franchise is basically expanding on the comic book I wrote years ago.
Yes, we're going to talk about that too.
So when Wildstorm had the rights, I pitched to the editor, Ben Abernathy. I'm like, this is what I'm doing for the Friday the 13th comic book. It wasn't, I want to do this. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. And he agreed. Mm-hmm. I would do, instead of just trying to do modernizations of things like they've been doing with these franchises where it's what would Jason be today, I want to go back.
Or do his family, like, you know, where did he come from? So obviously his family is evil too. So here,
that's all boring to me. I want to do the Mrs. Voorhees origin story. And in the comic book I did, which would work as a screenplay, it's framed by Annie from the very first movie, the one that's like, I like children. I hate when they call them kids. It sounds like little goats. She gets picked up by who we don't know is Mrs. Voorhees. And I have her, Mrs. Voorhees, narrating her story.
Ooh, okay.
So the perfect thing for me to, what I would do is I would say, hey, Blumhouse, give me $10 million. Mm-hmm. Pay Charlize Theron $3 to play Mrs. Voorhees.
I love it.
And shoot it like the original. Shoot it on Super 16 in 21 days, bare bones, and do the history of Mrs. Voorhees.
So she's the killer the whole time.
Yeah, it starts with her, when she got pregnant, what happened to Jason's father, how she worked at the camp, what happened to Jason. And in the comic book, I stumbled upon, and I was shocked no one else has thought of this beforehand, why Jason hates people having sex.
Yes.
Because when he was a little boy at the camp, his female counselor was off with her boyfriend having sex, and Jason sees them having sex. She's bent over her log, and he's having sex with her from behind, and she's screaming, and Jason thinks he's hurting her. So that's why this little kid imprints that sex is bad, not because he's being moral, but for a little boy, especially a mentally challenged little boy, seeing someone getting poked and screaming. So,
and you're getting a little bit psychological here with Jason that gives him a little bit what they're trying to do always to give these villains some kind of human kind of inside.
Yeah, because unlike Michael Myers, who is just death, he is just a great white shark, which I enjoy. I like that.
He's the boogeyman.
But Jason, there should be some empathy for, because you know, I had him. You know, I had Mrs. Voorhees hearing his voice when he was in the womb. Oh. You know, so I would love to do that. I'm a huge fan of that franchise. It's the first rated R movie I ever saw in the theater. I think there's something there. I think you can go back and mine what made it good. Don't make it just a video game of him killing teenagers. You can put some story there. It's never going to be Shakespeare, but it can be a really good, nutritious. It can be a pizza that's good for you.
Yeah, I love this so much. The reason I asked it is because of our love of Friday the 13th. I had to get your take, but the Pamela Voorhees stuff. I know your comic. It was before I even knew who you were. I was buying your comic, so it's wonderful to have you here. I want to talk about that. Welcome, one and all. It is episode 29 of the Reilly Roundtable, a show that talks about movies, talks about life, talks about movies and life, and everything in between. You heard him up top. It's Marc and Andreyko coming into the Roundtable. He's the current writer of Supergirl. Past credits include Torso, Wonder Woman, Birds of Prey, Fairest, and one of my favorites, as we mentioned, Friday the 13th, Pamela's Tale. My friend, how are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too.
Yeah, I got to celebrate with you.
Yeah, I was the only sober one in the room, so it was fun watching all you guys, all you paired off couples drinking wine stupid. Like it was going out of style.
I was so hungover. I haven't been that hungover. I don't even remember the Uber ride home because we hung out a little bit after you guys left.
Well, you guys did it dangerously, too. You guys were mixing different kinds of wine. And
mostly red.
And sugary desserts.
Yeah.
And the sugar upon sugar, that's what does it to you. It's
that's what got me, because I woke up with the headache to end all headaches.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Rachel Cushing was 2 episodes ago. We talked about wine, so she really did. She kept pouring. I couldn't have been more happy, though. Yeah. What a fun time.
It was great. I'm not a big New Year's Eve fan. I like, my tagline for New Year's Eve is it's Gay Pride Weekend for straight people. It's just people are drunk and idiots and just screaming. So being with 6 or 7 or 8 good friends, chill, having food, talking, and playing Heads Up, which is now my new favorite game.
Isn't it the greatest game of all time?
My
for
God.
Everybody viewing at home and listening right now on the Podcast One feed, Heads Up, yes, we played all night. That was the best.
App. It's the best app ever.
I'm going to have to teach my fiance how to play because she was like, I don't know how to play this.
She was hilarious.
It's hysterical.
She, and I mean this in the best, most complimentary way possible, feels like a sitcom character from the late 70s, early 80s.
She is. I
That's
think
not an
she'll
insult.
take. I think she'll take that as a compliment.
That's a term of endearment. But I was like, wow, okay?
Because as she's gotten to know me and all my friends in this space here, she's like, oh, I can't compete with that. And I'm like, yeah, you can, babe.
You guys got to be the Ropers for Halloween one year.
I'm down. I'm texting her right now. Well, this is great. This is episode 29. To have you here, Marc, I've been wanting to have you on for so many months now as we've gotten into this. I mentioned Rachel Cushing. I've had a lot of Schmodown people on. I've had a lot of artists, people in the space, but never a comic book writer. And this is what I love having you on for because, like I said, I did my research. Holy shit, dude. I know. I'm completely impressed. I always was.
25 years.
25 years. Let's start there. But I wanted to ask you first. I wanted to kind of bring it down a bit because as I was going down the rabbit hole with you, love is love. This is a fantastic thing. I had no idea you kind of corralled all the writers and kind of edited the book. And you won an Eisner Award.
Yeah, well, all of us won an Eisner Award.
All of you.
All the people that contributed to it. Basically, the morning after the Pulse nightclub shooting happened in Florida,
yes,
I woke up and I was just sick, and it happened to coincide with Gay Pride Weekend in LA, and it just felt like, we've had so many mass shootings in this country. It's insane. And I just put out there on Facebook, let's do a comic book, and if anybody wants to do it, I'll organize it because I'm a kid of the We Are the World era, where if you have a skill set, it's easy to write a check to a charity and then forget.
Right.
But having something that takes time, it was a catharsis for me. It was a way for people to revisit this thing. And it was so much more successful than it had any right to be because we went from idea to publication in less than 6 months.
I can't believe
with
that.
600 different contributors. J.K. Rowling let us use Harry Potter, and Jim Lee did. I pulled a quote from one of the novels, and Jim Lee did the art.
Unbelievable.
Patty Jenkins wrote the introduction. It debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. I got to promote it on Seth Meyers, which was ridiculous.
Wow.
And it raised $200,000 for the survivors and families here in the States. And then every year afterwards, we're going to do a different charity because the way charities work for specific crises, they only have a certain shelf life. So for 2017 to 2018, the money went to the Trevor Project. So I went to the Trevor Project event, their big Trevor Live celebration in December, and we gave them $55,000.
Wow.
There are 7 foreign editions. That half of the money are going to LGBT charities in those countries. There's French, German, Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, I believe. Italian. It's going to continue to generate money. It'll probably by the time we hit the 5th anniversary, we'll have generated over $1 million for charities. Wow. And that's money in charities' hands. I didn't want this to be a thing where we were paying people, so it was like 30 cents on the dollar. Every penny that came in goes back out. Goes right back out. So it's a privilege to have something that was just a reactionary idea to a tragedy have so much resonance, and it'll live longer than I will. I've said it many times. If it's the only thing that's on my obituary, I win.
You win. It's the most beautiful outpouring I've ever seen.
And it's still in print. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Comixology. The digital version has 20 extra pages.
Oh, wow.
We're already planning the 5th anniversary edition with a lot of extra material. And the only advice I can give is don't read it in public. You will ugly cry. It is a really emotional book. There's funny stuff in it. There's lots of tearful stuff in it, but I called it Love is Love because I didn't want it to be about gun control or about mental illness. I have issues about that. I wanted it to be ultimately those people were murdered because they were living their lives honestly.
Yeah.
And I want everyone to be in love. If everyone's in love and is loved and returned, I don't have any vested interest in people being. The only person I want bad things to happen to is our president. Yeah, because he's a monster.
No, I get it, and
even him. I wish somebody had hugged him when he was a kid, because then he might be a human being.
If he had more hugs, because the online culture that I've spoken about on this show many times ad nauseum, I like the love is love that you're bringing in, and that's why I wanted to start with it, because that's all I care about. I only want people. If you like a movie, go like your movie. Yeah, I'm not going to go yell at you. That's the culture we're in now.
Well, we're in a culture
worse. Worse stuff is happening out there, like you mentioned.
But we're in a culture too where you not liking something I take as a personal insult.
I don't
that's
understand
ridiculous.
that.
I don't like avocados. You can. I'm glad
How
people
dare
don't.
you.
Oh, they're disgusting.
Oh, I'm hitting
I know.
you
I'm the
on
only
Twitter
person.
right
I'm
now?
the only person in California that doesn't like avocados.
Yeah.
But me not liking something doesn't mean I want someone else to not like it as well.
Right.
I'm halfway done here. Best case scenario in life. So when I go see a movie or go to a restaurant or read a book or watch a TV show, I want it to be good.
Yeah.
I don't go wanting to see something because you hope it's bad is like going to a restaurant where you got food poisoning, hoping you get it again.
Right.
I like nothing more than going into a movie or watching a TV show that I don't have expectations for, and it's really good.
Yeah, it's my favorite. It's my favorite when you're surprised by these wonderful things.
And I'm going to get mad about things that matter. I'm going to get mad about kids in cages on the border.
Yes.
And 40% of the homeless population being veterans. I'm not going to get mad that you liked Star Wars and I didn't.
Yeah.
That's privilege right there to be able to get that be the issue of your day.
That's the thing. And that's the thing. When I start doing research for the show and I see the Love is Love, I wanted to start there because I thought it was so beautiful what you guys did, especially to hear it started with a Facebook message.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me of what a great person you are because you're one of my favorites to walk through these halls in the Schmodown. Because when I first met you, it was on Screen Junkies, and I think you whooped my ass in movie fights, and I was like, oh, this guy knows his stuff. So I love it. But
well, that's very sweet of you. I'm getting to be able to accept compliments for Love is Love, but it truly was a group effort.
Yeah, it looks that way.
DC Comics, IDW came together. My editors, Jamie Rich and Sarah Gatos, all the contributors. I might have pushed the boulder down the hill, but as it rolled down, everybody else.
You had a lot of help.
It was a group effort, and it's really. And if anybody's considering buying it, know that all the money that you pay for it goes to a charity. So people are literally helping other people by purchasing this book as well.
I love that. So Love is Love. Everybody, please check it out. Go buy it. I think it's a good thing and a good cause. But let's start there, Marc.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of people who are Roundtable fans. The best fans in the world, by the way. You're going to get a lot of love for this. I know it. I have no doubt. But things I like to talk about on the show are like being artists and being creative. And when did comics come into your life? How did you start?
I started reading comics when I was about 3.5, 4 years old because my late cousin Todd, who was my best buddy as a kid, grew up. I was reading comics. And when you're a little kid, you copy.
Oh, yeah.
So I was reading books. I had a pretty decent reading level at the age of 4 and 5 from Sesame Street and comic books.
I can see that, yeah.
So, and my parents were always, if we were at the grocery store and I said, I want a candy bar, they'd say, no, but you can get this comic book. So subsequently in 3rd grade, I had a 12th grade reading level. I was in Catholic school using words like apocalypse and Ragnarok and book reports and stuff.
That's fantastic.
And I wish I could read for pleasure more.
Yeah.
The only gifts I give to my friends' kids are books.
Yeah.
Because it's great. You could have a book that's just as violent as Grand Theft Auto, but if you're reading it, I'd have less problem with that for a child than a child playing the game because the child, when you're reading, you're the cinematographer, you're the casting director, you're the composer. Yep. It's far more active than just sitting there. And that's not slamming video games.
No,
but
I know what you're saying, but
I think you need to have a wide berth of things. And books are great. John Waters famously said, and I'll censor it because I don't know if I'm allowed to say bad words.
You can say fuck if you want. Yeah.
Okay. John Waters famously said, if someone picks you up and you go back to their apartment and they don't have any books, don't fuck them. And it's absolutely true.
It's very good advice. I was introduced to reading very young as well. I don't remember how young, but my dad is a huge reader. Mm-hmm. And I've always found that in order to help my own writing, to even get in the Schmodown frame of mind, I read right when I wake up because you're starting to unlock all these synapses are firing as you create your own scene, cast it, edit it, all these things that reading does, painting the picture. And for me, later on, I got into comics probably in high school. Mm-hmm. No, I was in middle school. Death of Superman was what got me into it because I was a Superman guy, but only from the movies. Mm-hmm. And so then
the Death of Superman is crazy. This is how crazy my life is.
Yeah?
I'm friends with Dan Jurgens now. Dan Jurgens was the writer and artist who did Death of Superman, and he's did some of the best Superman work of all time. He also did Warlord and all this stuff. But that's the weird thing about this industry. When you're working in the entertainment industry and you meet people and you become friends with them and you're coworkers, the 6-year-old me's like, that's Dan Jurgens.
Yeah.
That's George Perez.
How often does that happen when you're working with somebody like this now? He's a colleague now, somebody that you you were reading the stuff going, oh my God.
It's still ridiculous. I mean, Kevin Maguire is one of our main artists on Supergirl, and Kevin Maguire did the Justice League in the 80s, the comedy Justice League that was with Keith Giffen.
Yeah.
That was, and J.M. DeMatteis, who was the writer. And it was so influential, and to have Kevin Maguire drawing stuff that I write, it's like having Robert De Niro do your student film. You're like, I don't have anything to tell you. Just draw whatever you want, and I'll make it work. You know,
wow. So that's so great. So what was the first thing, pen to paper, that you wrote that you maybe opened the door, or is your first gig, something that red letter for Marc Andreyko?
I never had any interest in being a writer.
Interesting.
My degree from college is in directing theater, and I just sort of kind of fell into writing because when you're a director, you're kind of managing everything. And I had approached friends of mine who were writers about writing ideas of mine, and I realized I was going to micromanage them and it would kill our friendship. So I'm like, I'm just going to try it myself.
Yeah.
And somehow I convinced people I knew what I was doing. I was like, oh, great. Okay. And 25 years later, here I am. So
here you are. What was the first issue? What was the
my first published comic of note where I did was a Doctor Strange one-shot called Doctor Strange, What Is It That Disturbs You, Stephen?
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to ask about that one in particular. How does one get on that? That's a big title.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Well, I went to college at Kent State University, and there were a lot of comic professionals who live in Ohio and in Kent. And one of them is my friend P. Craig Russell, who's known for, he did that Doctor Strange story originally as an annual in 1974, and he's adapted Oscar Wilde's fairy tales and operas. He's doing the American Gods comic book. He did Sandman issue 50, which was the Aladdin issue that everyone knows. He's just an amazing guy.
I've heard about these. I need. I'm going to get a note in paper after this and get all of the recommendations from you.
Well, Craig was a buddy of mine, and I had talked to him about this annual he had done in 1974. And he was going to write the whole thing and draw it. And then Marvel Editorial, I guess, gave it to another writer to finish. And it wasn't what his story was.
Yeah.
And I said, well, and this was 92, 93. I said, well, why don't you just call Marvel and say you want to do the director's cut and do the last 10 pages of your original version.
Okay.
So he did. He called them. And then I saw him about a week later. I said, hey, what did Marvel say? He goes, oh, we're doing it. I'm like, awesome. And he said, well, when can you start?
Well,
I said, what? He said, well, you're going to write it with me. I said, I am. And Marvel said yes to that. He's like, yes. So it's a story I don't like telling aspiring writers because it's like being Rita Hayworth discovered at Schwab's. I mean, I really didn't do anything.
Well, you knew the right person.
But that wasn't my intent. When I suggested it to him, I was like, you should do this. And then it ended up that his style had changed so much in the 30 years after that we redrew the entire thing. And so it's some pages are redrawn and some pages are brand new. And I told him, I'm like, when you tear down an old house, when you build a new one there, you have to put an old brick in the driveway. Right. So there's one panel from the original annual that is printed exactly in the book.
That's fantastic. Well, I think it's a sign of what in this business, it's sometimes who you know. And
it's all serendipity. It's all relationships. It's not like being a plumber where you can get an apprenticeship and you goes from A to B to C.
Right.
This business is just happy accidents or unfortunate accidents.
Whatever you want to say, yeah. Because I see it all the time. People are like, how do I get into comic writing, especially, and this is a great serendipitous thing that happened. Is that here you are. One of the things that really stands out to me as a fan of this man's work that you worked on was Torso with Bendis.
Yeah.
This is such – and I read this thing pretty much when it came out because I'm a huge –
20 years ago this year, I believe.
I mean, I'm a huge true crime guy. I love serial killers, all these kind of things that just interest me. And the idea of taking Elliot Ness, and going back and doing this. And I know you got very close in the development of this as a movie.
Oh, many times.
And now where is it?
Is it Torso,
dead?
Just for the audience that may not know it, Torso
give a recap.
When Elliot Ness left Chicago, he came to the city of Cleveland, and Cleveland was one of the first cities rebounding from the Depression because of the steel mills and all that. And there were thousands of people riding the rails coming into the town. And one of the first serial killers in the United States was in Cleveland, and they called him the Torso Killer because all they ever found were torsos or heads, and 14 victims at least, and they only ever identified a handful of them. And it was kind of the reverse of what Elliot Ness did in Chicago. In Chicago, he never fired his gun.
Right.
that Sean Connery was not real.
Right.
He didn't drop Frank Nitti off a roof because Frank Nitti died at the age of like 82 in Boca Raton.
Okay.
So it was him making his own mythology and using the press to make himself this folk hero. And that backfired on him in Cleveland because when the killer was going on, when the killings were happening, he did all sorts of great things. Like he put the first traffic light in Cleveland, downtown Cleveland, at an intersection where 400 people were killed every year.
Wow.
So he did all these great things, but the serial killer thing caught the eyes of the press. I mean, even Adolf Hitler talked about it on the radio in the 30s about that's the sort of madman Western civilization brings.
Wow.
Cut to Europe. Haha, joke's on you.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting to see, whereas The Untouchables is about 85% hooey, our Torso is about 85% fact, but we just condensed the timeline because the case unraveled over years. Mm-hmm. And it's been optioned a billion times. At one point, it was actually greenlit at Paramount with David Fincher directing, and Matt Damon, Casey Affleck, Rachel McAdams, and Gary Oldman. And I got the call from my lawyer. The check's on the way. I went to go get the check the next day. They changed their mind.
Oh.
So that's just part of the life in Hollywood. The rights are now back to me and Brian, and we're figuring out what we want to do with it. And I think it is going to be best served by being streaming or a TV thing.
That was my next question.
Because it's an embarrassment of riches. Not only do you have, Ness used the very first lie detector test, interviewing a suspect.
Yeah.
Ness knew who the killer was, but he couldn't name him officially because the killer probably got committed to an institution. And back then, when you were committed, you weren't coming out.
Right.
And the family of the guy who was probably the Torso killer is still active in Cleveland politics. So.
Whoa. Wow.
But yeah, we want to just explore. Well, first of all, studios don't make movies that cost $50 million anymore. They make $200 million movies. And they certainly,
or like a $5 million
or a $5 million movie. And this is something that it's not the destination, it's the journey that's interesting. Mm-hmm. And by going to like an 8 or 10 hour miniseries, especially when I saw The Alienist on TNT, which was an uncompromising adaptation of that novel, I'm like, oh, we could do this now. And on my short list, the two people I would pick to play Elliot Ness are Matt Bomer, who is
he's great.
I got to meet him through Love is Love, and we've kind of become friends, and he's
fantastic.
And he's the nicest man on the planet.
Oh,
great. He is such a chill, sweet, generous guy, and he looks like the 40s. Or Armie Hammer, who I describe as if a fedora was a person, it would be Armie Hammer. So,
if a fedora was a person.
He looks like 1939.
He's like, put up your dukes, man. I'll just take you, box you out in the
Would you like a bottle of sassafras?
That's fantastic. Well,
we'll see. Everything. There are no overnight successes in Hollywood. It took Warner Brothers 20 years to make a Batman movie.
Yeah.
So 20 years is nothing. But now, both Brian and I are at a place in our lives and our careers and knowing what we're good at and what we're not and what we bring to the table, that it's nice to have control of the property, which is why I try to do my spec material as comic books first, because controlling the IP is important.
Yes.
Writing a spec script and having it get sold off is like putting your kid into foster care.
Yeah, well, you're done.
Well, then
they can fire you. You're
generally
off
in
the
Hollywood, when you put your kid in your spec script into foster care, you find out John Wayne Gacy adopted them.
Exactly.
So having control of the IP gives you something. Gives you leverage.
Yes.
And that's an important thing.
I also think, when you're talking film, it's a visual medium and you're able to kind of help the process along.
Yeah, there's the storyboards right there.
Here's the storyboards. I wrote with a writing partner of mine called The People from Anywhere. It was an idea. It was a kid's movie. We did the comic first. We had 2 issues. Didn't get very far. We got to GK Films at one point, and they were making at the time Hugo. We were getting ready to go pitch to the big man. Hugo came out, and Grahamkin said, "I don't want to make kids movies anymore," and that was it. That was the end of that.
Hugo is a kids movie for kids that have a really good attention span. It's beautiful.
I was like, come on, I'm doing the Where the Wild Things Are via Guillermo del Toro. Come on now. So with Torso, though, how did you get involved with Brian Michael Bendis? Because he's one of my all-times.
Well, Brian and I became friends from the comics circuit. I met him at a convention in Detroit, and we just started talking, and we became buddies. And I had always been interested in serial killers and that sort of thing were always really fascinating to me. And I was going over to his house. Him and his wife invited me over for a Passover dinner. And as I'm driving through the east side of Cleveland, I see an old building that has the Elliot Ness for mayor billboard still painted on it, all faded. And I was like, oh my God, that's right. Elliot Ness ran for mayor of Cleveland.
That's right.
And then I started thinking about, oh yeah, there was that torso killer thing, that case. And I got to Brian's house, and we're at the dinner with his mom and bunches of family, and I'm pitching him and I'm like, they only found a head, and then they found this. And Brian's like, yeah. And we decided to collaborate on it, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. Now, were you guys going to write the screenplay for the movie?
We did the first draft when it was set up at Miramax.
Okay.
We sold the option, and we wrote the screenplay. We haven't since, but if it comes back to television or wherever it ends up next, I'm of a mind where we have to be involved.
Yes.
Because we bring something to the table. Between the two of us, Brian and I have somewhere like 75 years of experience.
Yes.
We know that case backwards and forwards.
Right.
I mean, when we pitched it the first time, we made little files with pictures and stuff like they were crime files to do, because that was the thing in the 90s.
Yeah.
Dazzle them.
What do you got, kid? Well, I'm going to dazzle you right now.
But the idea of it being a TV miniseries is really attractive to, I think, both of us, because you can expand upon it, and and we wouldn't have to write all of them. We could write,
get a writer's room, maybe.
Get a great director, producer to come in and collaborate. We don't want to just do it ourselves, but we want to be actively involved. I always joke, if there was still 80s option money going around, like when they give here's $8 million to Joel Schumacher for his grocery list.
Right.
If they give us that money, they can do whatever they want. I do have a price, but no one wants to meet it, So since no one's going to pay us $5 or $10 million for the rights to go away, we're going to have to be where would be the place you'd want it? Like Netflix or Hulu? The options are endless. To me, there are so many places for it now, for it to be broadcast. It's just finding the right group of people. I don't, it's easy to get dazzled by a name of a company.
Sure.
It can be
another thing behind the scenes.
Yeah, if it's the right person, that's the important part. Because making stuff is difficult under the best of circumstances. So you want to work with people that you trust, that trust you, where you can have an open dialogue, where there's no bullshit, there's no, couching what you're saying. So it just depends. I mean, we've been hit up by almost everybody in town that wants to meet with us, and it's just a matter of finding the right person. I'm not being coy or playing hardball or anything. It's just a matter of figuring out who's the right fit, who has a vision for this that kind of gels with ours. Because also, too, we don't want this to be a direct, exact adaptation.
Okay.
All the best adaptations are different because things work on the printed page that don't work in a film. Silence of the Lambs has some major differences than the book. The Talented Mr. Ripley by Anthony Minghella is a beautiful adaptation of that book because it's faithful in tone. It's not faithful to the letter. The most recent version of It.
Oh yeah,
I think it's a better version than the book, because
I do too.
They make stuff, they capture the tone of that so importantly,
right? And update it because it was 50s then, 80s then, and we're going 27 years later.
Changing the kids' fears to being personal, all that stuff works beautifully.
Yeah.
And with something like the only movie I think that you has to be exactly shot for shot from the comic book material is Watchmen, and I'm a big fan of the Watchmen movie. I think if Watchmen came out, I think that movie came out today, it would get a Best Picture nomination.
I think it's one of those things that
the audience wasn't ready for it, and Warner Brothers didn't sell it the right way. That first trailer was beautiful, but no one knew what the movie was about.
Right.
If that movie had a teaser trailer that had Rorschach saying, "Someone's killing retired superheroes, and I have to figure out who," that's what the movie's about.
Yeah.
And I say with Watchmen, if Deadpool came out the same year as Watchmen, it wouldn't have made any money.
Right.
We had to with the newborn. You can't feed a newborn steak. You have to start with applesauce and build up. And 10 years after the fact, the audience is sophisticated enough to get that.
I just read that somebody put it out there today on Twitter, of all things, looking back at Unbreakable and how here we are getting Glass later, but that back then they weren't ready for Unbreakable. They weren't ready for the deconstruction of superheroes.
Well, I am
not a fan of that.
Not really. I think it's admirable, but I think it shows its age because I think the writer-director didn't really know comic book culture. There were things in it.
Yeah.
But as a comic book viewer, I'm like, wait, what are the rules?
You would know.
What are the rules? I mean, once again,
the rules. Yeah.
I'm glad people like it, and I'll probably go see Glass just out of curiosity's sake. But yeah, I mean, and now it's like he gets superhero stuff because it's crazy to me. My mom knows who Groot is. If you told me 10 years ago that was ever going to happen, I would say I'm going to win the Nobel Prize for Physics before that happens.
Right. So what do you make of all this? I mean, we are in, what do you call it now? I mean, it's not the Renaissance anymore. We're still going. I mean, these comic book movies now are everything.
Well, I think there's a number of reasons why. I think one, it's mythology, but it's mythology that's owned by corporations so they can milk it for money. There's the profit thing. And also, we're in a world, just the average waking up and being a human being on the planet is tough.
Yes.
And by having these iconic heroes who Spider-Man has to worry about Aunt May being sick and paying off his student loans and getting evicted while fighting the selflessness is something that we want to see in ourselves. And I also think too that we want to see entertainment that can get our minds off the real world.
Yes.
I mean, there was when I go to a movie and I can watch it as a viewer and not be like, oh, I would fix that or change that or change that. When I'm just there for the ride, nothing is more exhilarating. I mean, the last time I felt that, there were 2 movies this year, recent movies that I loved that both made me forget that the world is on fire.
Okay.
Spider-Verse,
loved it.
which is
top 10 of the year for sure.
A nearly perfect film.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I need to see it again.
See it in 3D.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not usually a 3D guy, but yeah.
Me either. But
I can see maybe that animation style really popping.
If you have access to a theater that has a good projector where the light is good, because sometimes 3D is too dark. Like the Chinese, I think, is still showing it in IMAX 3D.
Okay.
It's worth the extra $10.
All right.
It's great. And the other film that I just enjoyed this year was A Simple Favor.
We just saw that. It is fantastic.
It's Gone Girl if it was a 1950s women's picture, and it's funny, but it's not a comedy. It's not campy. It's not self-aware. And I was never a big fan of Blake Lively.
Okay. And she's fantastic.
And she should get I'm furious that they're not campaigning for Best Supporting Actress for her because if you're going to do Mira Sorvino or Marissa Tomei or a commercial supporting actor character, every single moment she's on screen, she's electric. And Anna Kendrick is great too. The entire movie is so much fun. And I saw it twice in the theater, and both times I saw it, the audience was like, "What movies were for?" No one was texting or tweeting. We were all watching the movie and hooting and hollering. And it's just a delightful, delightful film.
We finally rented it. We finally streamed it the other day. And that you talk about, when you're at home, sometimes you kind of drift off, and especially if you're Netflix, just whatever's going on. This was like, I just was sucked in, and Anna Kendrick is fantastic. Yeah. And she did all the heavy lifting for this movie, but I kept wanting Blake Lively. I'm like, she was like stealing
Anna
the
Kendrick
show.
is Batman.
Right.
Blake Lively's
like
Heath
the
Ledger's
Joker.
Yeah. And Blake Lively, as a gay man who never has done drag, Blake Lively's costume, she wears vintage tuxedos with no shirt underneath and drinks gin and wears high. I'm like, I kind of want to be Blake Lively in that movie.
That's fantastic.
It's a great, great, great movie.
Oh my God, I love that you like that movies with certain superhero movies. I want to ask your take on some of the DC stuff that's happening around. Did you like Man of Steel?
I love Man of Steel.
Okay, I'm a Man of Steel.
I will gladly die on that hill of Man of Steel.
I'm with you, man.
Yes, Christopher Reeve was an amazing Superman.
Superman 1978 is my favorite superhero movie because it hit me at the right moment.
Yeah.
I can look at it though and go, yeah, that's a different time.
And the John Williams score, I think it's the Superman theme is the best piece of music John Williams has ever written. It should be the national anthem, and he's written hundreds of brilliant pieces.
Right.
But even as a little kid, I had issues with Superman because I like villains that are scary. Mm-hmm. And the Otis stuff drove me crazy even as a 7-year-old. Man of Steel is, one, I like it because it doesn't try to be Christopher Reeve.
Right. That's what I appreciated the most.
It's also, he's been a superhero for a week in that movie.
Right.
It's Superman week 1.
Yes.
And you know what heroes do? They do things to the cost of their soul that will help everyone else.
Right.
He had no choice but to kill General Zod at that point.
Yes.
And he will never kill again. And it wasn't subtle. It's the pietà. He's crying and Lois Lane is holding him.
He screamed.
It's Michelangelo.
When he screamed after breaking Zod's neck, hey, spoiler alert, everybody out there, and he screams. The first thing that popped in my mind was he just killed the last of his kind. And
he had no choice
scream.
because being Superman in that movie and fighting General Zod is like me going up against Ronda Rousey.
Yes.
She's bred to fight. Zod is genetically bred to fight. He had and the Phantom Zone was shut off. Mm-hmm. He had no choice.
Yeah.
And I think that I love the movie. I think the movie is great. I love that Lois knows who he is. I think secret identities are a thing, are still a holdover of the McCarthy era.
Yeah, I mean, if you notice now, we're less involved with the secret identity.
It's what I loved
stuff.
in the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He goes and tells his girlfriend. Because of course you're going to tell your girlfriend you're a superhero.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I love that you're going to die on that hill. You're going to have some companions up there.
I stand by it, and it's not just a pose. I think Man of Steel is my favorite Superman film.
It immediately when it opened, I was sucked in. That movie had me in the first minute because of the music, because of what you said. It was not the Donner Superman. We were like, wait a minute, I've never seen this before. And I was just sucked into that mythology that he created. And then I wish we got more.
The two things I would change in that movie, the two things that I think would be fixed, that I would fix if I can be so arrogant as to say that. One, I would have cut in a couple of scenes of Superman catching some people in Metropolis, just one, or just cut to the National Guard saying Block 4 is clear.
Right.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem I think people have is when Kevin Costner dies in the tornado. That would have been fixed by using the kid who played younger Clark, because even though Henry Cavill is the most handsome human being alive, he doesn't look like a 17-year-old.
No.
And if you have a 17-year-old there, especially a 17-year-old who grew up in the Midwest in a farming community, you're going to listen to your father.
Yeah.
And by having Costner doing that, people complained that when Kevin Costner, when he says, should I have let those kids drown? He said, maybe.
Yeah.
That's paraphrasing a panel from Action Comics 1. Pa Kent says to Clark, people are going to be scared of you. Yeah. Hide who you are because people are superstitious. So it's actually incredibly faithful to Superman.
See, there you go. All of these things you brought up, some of the things that people were screaming about, it never affected me. It just, I'm a Superman guy, but I'm not completely in the lore of the comics.
And the last line of the movie, when Lois says to Clark, "Welcome to the planet," I just got goosebumps.
Yeah,
it is so beautiful and so great and so effortless and so smart without being self-aware. It just is. It's just great.
I wouldn't. I mean, I would cut down like the action scene and the fight between Zod. I'd shave 5 minutes off that thing.
Oh,
10 minutes off it. That's it.
That can be said of most superhero movies.
Yes.
The fact that all these movies are over 2 hours and 10 minutes long is nuts.
I mean, I'll take it sometimes, depending on the movie, but most of the time, I just want to, what you said, get in, forget all the nonsense that's going on out there. That's why I like my superhero movies, my Star Wars movies.
And anybody who follows me anywhere knows that I'm obsessed with Henry Cavill.
I do.
I'm sure I'm on a watch list for his publicists and securities because they're like, oh, this middle-aged guy is obsessed with you. It's really creepy.
Well, okay, so Man of Steel, you're on that hill. Batman v Superman.
I like Batman versus Superman.
I do too. Yeah, and I'm liking it more and more. We just watched it again.
The director's cut is better.
The director's cut is much better.
I know what people's problems are. I think it's easy to make fun of the Martha joke, the Martha line. But for me, when they said that, I was like, I can't believe I never put those two together.
Didn't either. And it just makes it. We just watched it, like I said the other day, and it opens with Batman and going in the well, and then Martha. He says it at the beginning, the first 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, look, it was all set up.
Now I know people have issues with Jesse Eisenberg, but I sort of like Lex Luthor being an ADD Mark Zuckerberg, and I had the perfect solution for that if they ever do a sequel. It opens with Jesse Eisenberg getting shot and killed, and the camera spins around, and
it's the real Lex Luthor?
It's his father, and he says, I knew I never should have had kids. And when I run a studio and I have money, I'm going to cast as Lex Luthor, and I'm taking this very slow to drive everyone crazy, Tom Hanks.
I love that.
Tom Hanks has never really played a villain.
No.
The closest was sort of probably Road to Perdition.
Yeah.
But Tom Hanks is the guy that America loves. And by having him be sinister behind that would be great and delicious. I think he would do it. And it would be great because for me, the realization I had about the Lex Luthor-Superman relationship is very much like Amadeus. Superman is Mozart. Luthor is Salieri.
Yeah.
Superman, it just is. Mozart heard music. Salieri had to work his ass off.
Right.
So Lex hates Superman not because he's purely evil, but because he makes it, backwards and in high heels. He makes it look easy, and Lex has to work for that.
I love that idea. See, we need Marc and Andreyko on the sequel that we're never getting, apparently.
I don't know if that's never. I would love to, even though there are obviously many issues with Justice League. When you see
Justice League is my least favorite of all of them. It was a mess.
It's a mess, but there's stuff that works and there's stuff that doesn't.
Some of it,
but when you see Henry Cavill smile, he has earned the right to have a happy Superman movie.
Yes, I agree.
I would love to have Matthew Vaughn direct a Superman movie.
Me too.
I would love to have Ron Howard direct a Superman movie.
Really, Ron Howard? I wouldn't put him there.
I think Ron Howard. I think he has the ability. He's done enough big budget stuff, and he gets the sort of Americana of it all, and he's due for recapturing his voice.
Yeah. Well, Matthew Vaughn was rumored at one point, and I was all for it. I'm going to say something that's going to drive people crazy. Bring Zack Snyder back.
Oh, I don't disagree.
Man of Steel 2?
Once again, let's talk about this real quick, and then we can move on.
I wanted to geek out with Superman with you.
The most frustrating thing about Justice League is if you look at what Zack did, Zack had a vision of all this darkness, Superman dies, we realize he was a symbol, and then light comes when he comes back.
Yes.
He was setting up a preamble.
Yes.
You have to know pain to know what pleasure is. You have to know what bad things are to appreciate good things. If everything is good all the time, it's just white noise. Nothing has any value. And to kick the chair out from under him in the middle of Justice League was, I think, really unfair because
you never got to see that fruition of his vision.
You never got to see what he had finished. And I wish Warner Brothers would have said, look, we're pushing the movie back to May or to March when Batman vs Superman opened.
Sure.
Because it needs time to this reverse engineering of saying we have a date, the movie's going to come out then, is like me saying, oh, I want to have a baby in April. Oh, it's January. We're going to make the baby grow really, really fast. It makes no sense.
No.
And I also have a theory that if Zack Snyder didn't look like a jock, nerds would like him more.
Wow.
I think if he's buff and he's got the barbed wire tattoo and he's sort of dude broy in his presentation.
Yeah, it looks like Josh McCouga.
He looks like the guy that used to knock our trapper keepers out of our arms in the hallway. And now he's in charge of our mythological geek icons. If we had never seen an interview with him, people would support him. I think it's
interesting.
I think it's unfair to him.
Yeah.
And because I do think, and maybe I won't get fans from your show after this. I think his Dawn of the Dead is better than the George Romero one.
Ooh, see, I can't go there, but it's a damn good movie. It's one of my out of Snyder's movies. Dawn of the Dead is up there. It's Man of Steel first.
I think Man of Steel and Watchmen are great. Sucker Punch is god awful, but everybody's got a sucker punch in them. Steven Spielberg did his with Ready Player One. Everybody's got one of those.
Oh, you didn't like Ready Player One?
Yeah.
Huh.
I'd rather watch 1941 on a loop for the rest of my life.
Well, that's a podcast for another time.
Yeah.
But Zack Snyder, I would love to see return. The problem I had with Justice League is that
it's two different movies.
It's two different movies.
You know who directed what in those movies.
Yes.
And it's a peanut butter and onion sandwich.
Yes, it is. I didn't want Marvel. There's a reason why I was responding to Man of Steel and then Batman v Superman and then Wonder Woman. I felt like it was different. I felt like we were getting something different from Marvel.
I want movies that have personality that can exist in a world that is shared, but they don't all look the same.
Right.
And Marvel does what Marvel does, and Marvel does it well. Don't copy that. Find something else. I love that. I just saw Aquaman, and I enjoyed. It's a mess of a film, but there was stuff in it that was really fun and stuff in it that was gloriously stupid. But what was great about that, and like Wonder Woman, is there's references to the DC Extended Universe.
Yeah.
But you don't need to see them, and they each have their distinct personalities. It's why all this all started with Marvel. When Marvel started with Bryan Singer on X-Men and Sam Raimi on Spider-Man and Ang Lee on Hulk. You had these directors whose styles were visible in the movies, but those characters could coexist.
Yeah.
And my only issue with some of the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff is they don't feel like movies to me. They feel like episodes of a TV show that I go see in the theater.
Right.
And that's not an insult. It's just it's not my taste. I want a movie to be a complete meal, even if it's a sequel.
Yeah.
Because if you watch Empire Strikes Back and you've never seen Star Wars or Return of the Jedi, it works as a movie. Even though it has cliffhangers, it's a satisfying movie. To me, sometimes seeing these extended universe movies, I feel like I'm going to a restaurant and the chef is saying, here's the food. But tomorrow, the food's going to be even better.
Right.
Well, I'm here now, so I would like this meal to be complete.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it that way. I love what Marvel's doing, but
I respect it immensely.
Yeah, no,
don't
and
get
I get
me
what
wrong.
you're saying.
It's not that it's bad, but for me, maybe it's showing my age. I like movies that are in a franchise to be, I would much prefer a James Bond approach where each movie is self-contained but part of a shared timeline than each one being like episodes.
Yeah, and I wonder if that went into why I didn't like Ant-Man and the Wasp that much, because I'm coming off of Infinity War and I happen to like my Marvel
But
with
Michelle
all this.
Pfeiffer, come on.
She's fantastic.
Michelle Pfeiffer is Janet Van
Believe
Dyne.
me,
Yes, please.
all the characters and the acting, it's across the board. There was something about Ant-Man and the Wasp where I just finally, at the end of the movie, and we got that tag, the teaser that connects to Infinity War. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I don't know why. It just didn't affect me the way I wanted it to. I really wanted to like the movie, and maybe it was because I've been programmed to like the Marvel formula where now you give me all this Infinity War stuff and then I'm like, we're not getting it. I have to wait.
Well, I think we're going to see some changes in Phase 4.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's going to be the characters who die. There's going to be the recasting. Hopefully there'll be some stuff. I hope that
X-Men.
I'm nervous.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if Disney would make X-Men. They wouldn't make Logan. They won't make Deadpool. If Disney had the full rights to Spider-Man, I don't think we'd see a Spider-Verse animated movie.
Yeah.
I worry
about that
I like
too.
them being friends, but I don't really want to see the Marvel Cinematic Universe X-Men.
Really? Oh, I do.
Because I think I know what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I just don't know how they're going to do it.
That being said, I have immense faith in Kevin Feige. I've known Kevin for 100 years, and watching his meteoric rise, it's one of the most well-deserved. He's probably arguably the best working producer in Hollywood.
For what they accomplished.
He did something that on paper...
Yeah.
The closest thing to that before the Marvel Cinematic Universe was when they did all the Lord of the Rings movies back to back.
Right. Yeah.
It was a gamble that could have destroyed superhero movies. So once again, they're not always 100% my thing, but I have immense respect for them. And being able to complain that there's too many superhero movies is something that when I was a kid, I never thought I would say.
Yeah. I personally love the idea that we keep getting them. But to go to your point with Aquaman, because this is what I was bringing up. I watched Justice League, and you can let's just say for argument's sake, I watched it in the middle, it shifted tone. And started going towards where I see the tone now with Aquaman. And I'm seeing something completely different from Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. And that's what I'm missing. And that's what I missed from a little bit of what Aquaman gave me. I just thought it was such a radical change of tone that I am missing Snyder's stuff.
Maybe, but for me, Aquaman inherently it leaned into the ridiculousness.
Yeah, and I think you need to do that.
I think Grant Morrison said, and I'll paraphrase, if people care about where Batman gets the tires rotated on the Batmobile, they're missing the point. None of it's real.
Yes.
Who cares?
Important tip, everyone. Yes.
And I think Aquaman so gloriously leaned into the ridiculousness of it. I just saw it a couple days ago, so I need some more time. I need to revisit it.
Same.
And stuff. But there were moments in it that were genius.
There were great moments in it.
It's just one of those things that I'm glad it's going to make $1 billion because anytime a movie that's a little bit outside what's expected makes money, it lets studios say, well, maybe we'll try this because that worked. And anything that nudges the studios to be a little bit more open, especially in this era of we're going to make $800 million movies a year and that's it, it's a good thing.
That's exactly where I was going with this, is because I want Aquaman to do exactly what it's doing. Because I'm hoping then they look to a Superman, a Batman, a Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman. We're aware it's going to be fine. Like that. Oh yeah,
Wonder Woman. I just rewatched. I caught it on TV.
Yeah, they've been replaying on.
And that's such a good movie.
I love it. It's underneath Man of Steel. I love it. That I have the same problems. The one problem everybody has. The very end, the villain. Just it felt like we were getting something so different in the very end there, but that is such a fucking nitpick. I could care less because when it was on the other day, I sat and watched and I smiled.
And I smile. I get teary eyed. When Wonder Woman says to the sniper when he says I'm going to stay behind, then Charlie, who would sing for us? Yeah, that sums up everything you need to know about Wonder Woman as a character.
Yeah,
and those moments are so few and far between in any movie, and to have moments of resonant character stuff like that in a superhero movie is a great thing.
Well, it's interesting because why didn't you brought up something very interesting I kind of want to explore, and this is just off the cuff here, but the Man of Steel, we love it. Batman v Superman was markedly a little different, but even darker. And I love your idea that Zack Snyder was like showing the pain and the suffering before we get the Superman we wanted, or what a lot of people, the smiling Superman at the end of Justice League. Do you think maybe that's why the DC was, everybody starts comparing DC Marvel. Marvel was a little bit more upbeat, and that's what I responded to the darkness.
I think it's the internet.
Yeah,
I think it's the internet. No, I really do. I think
expand, please.
I mean, I think when I'm emperor of the world, you're not going to be able to post anything on the internet that isn't your real name. Because I have never posted anything on the internet that I wouldn't say to the person I was talking about if they were sitting across from me.
Okay.
I think that Marvel did a really good job of reaching out to the fans and making the fans. Disney has somehow, this giant mega corporation has convinced people that they want to be our friend. The same, and it works. It works. The brand has value, and I think by the fact that DC and Marvel have always been rivals, I think it played up that rivalry, and people like to take ownership of things.
Yeah,
and I don't understand, because I think that the DC movies, I always joke to my friends at DC, I'm like, are you guys built on Pet Sematary? Because you guys get called on things that Marvel does the exact same way. And they do it and they're hailed for it, and you do it and you're the worst people alive.
Right. That's the internet.
I don't have any horse in this race other than I want all movies to be good, and I want the rules to be the rules for everybody. If the rules aren't consistent, the rules don't apply to anyone.
Right.
And it's I refuse to get too upset about it, because once again, I'm not a stockholder in either company.
Right.
So ultimately, I just want the movies to be interesting. But I do think that sort of tribalism that has taken over our country, and the idea that if you don't like something, you're insulting me, which is ridiculous.
I don't get it.
I just think that is problematic. But now we're seeing the switch, because now people are like, they want to see the Snyder cut of Justice League. I'm like, can you pick a side and just stay consistent?
Yeah,
I'm exhausted.
That's where I was confused too, because I would love to see a Snyder cut. I don't think it exists.
Yeah.
I think because he was off of it, so it would be schematics. It would be.
I just want to see, and I joked about this to Diane Nelson. I said, I want to see the mustache footage.
I want that too.
If they released a Porn Stash Justice League Blu-ray, I would buy 500 of them just in case 499 of them broke. That
was my biggest issue with Justice League, was you're going to put that as the very first scene in the movie is mustache guy. Like, my issue with that is see around it.
That didn't bother me too much.
Bugged the shit out of me so much.
My annoyance with that was it didn't have any payoff.
No.
It should have ended with that scene with him not on the camera, him talking to these kids and being Superman.
Well, and I'm a continuity guy sometimes, and I'm like, wait a minute,
when did that take place?
When did that take place? It happened before he died. When did he change his outfit then? Because that outfit's very bright. Yeah. The one he died in is pretty muted. So what's going on here?
But he was shirtless when they resurrected him.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
This is very true. I wanted the black suit Superman. I wanted that. I was hoping Justice League, and I bet Snyder did. Maybe. I don't know.
They did shoot some of the black suit stuff.
And I know that. Yeah. No, I was really hoping for some of the Death of Superman, bringing this full circle, some of the Death of Superman comic in some form. Whether or not his body was taken to the Fortress of Solitude, that's what I was hoping happened. Nope, not so much. It just didn't work for me. But going back,
I do want to see a Flash film. I love Ezra Miller.
I do too.
He's so aggressively weird, and I don't think it's a pose. I think he's legitimately just.
I think he's the weirdest person I've ever seen.
The music he hears in his head is the music. No one else has that soundtrack, and I say that with the utmost respect. And he's a terrific actor.
I think he's fantastic.
If you followed his career from Perks of Being a Wallflower to We Need to Talk About Kevin, I mean,
Trainwreck, he's fantastic.
He's
delightfully weird.
Yeah. And unapologetic and not weird for weird's sake. I believe he's that weird in life.
Yeah, and Flash was the least of my concerns or problems with that movie. It was more in the execution, because midstream, he turned the other way, and I felt like that was a sort of a reaction to not the box office are looking for. They're looking at Aquaman now going, that's the box office we wanted, because it's about to pass Batman v Superman.
I think it already has.
Has it already? Yeah, it's close. It's going to be $1 billion.
$1 billion by Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah, and for me now, that's good, because I hope now that they can look at this and go, okay, great. Wonder Woman 1984 is going to crush it.
Oh, it's going to be so good.
Give me Man of Steel 2, please. I would love to see it. Matthew Vaughn or Zack Snyder or
You don't
whatever.
call it Man of Steel 2. You call it Man of Tomorrow.
Yes. What do we call it? So Jason Inman came on Reilly Roundtable. We pitched our Man of Steel 2. And I think it was Man of Tomorrow. And then the third movie is Last Son. Yeah? Do I get the sign off?
It's not bad.
In theory?
It's not bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I gotta check in with Inman about this. All right, let's keep talking about some other things other than DC Comics and all that kind of stuff. Friday the 13th. I got to revisit this again.
Sure.
Because I love your idea of Pamela Voorhees. Now, this, if I'm remembering correctly, by the way, I love that I'm able to talk. You know that Friday the 13th, people know me, Reilly, as Friday the 13th guy and Superman guy. So I'm like checking every fucking box on one episode. So I read the Friday the 13th series before, I believe, the Pamela Voorhees one. You can.
Well, it was a bunch of different miniseries. Actually, it was.
There was one limited series. I want to say 7 or 8 issues where we learned that the reason Jason comes back is because of like Indian burial ground or something like that. I happen to love that line. I really did. But let's get to the movie because you're talking about a Pamela Voorhees movie. I want to start there. Will that set up Jason for the franchise?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would do stuff with the framework is Annie in the car. In the middle of it, we have the Annie getting killed in the woods.
Okay.
The very last scene is Alice running out of the cabin, the headlights. She's like, "They're all dead. They're all dead." And Mrs. Voorhees is like, "I'm not afraid." And she goes in, and we zoom in on the Jeep, and there's Annie dead in it. I would, if I was expanding that to film, I would put POV of young Jason watching from it and then lead into that. I wouldn't have him actually appear in the current timeline. You'd see him in the flashbacks as the little kid. But then that way you could open a sequel with seeing him, with the last scenes of the first movie, with him seeing his mother get killed and that sort of thing.
What age would this be?
Well, I think, I would actually keep it set in the 80s.
Yes.
I would do, Jason was born in the 50s, the early 80s this happens. And I would have Jason be, if he was 11 or 12 when he died.
When he drowned.
When he drowned. And his age, let's say for supernatural rules, he's aged slowly. He'd be like 19, 20.
Perfect. I would love to see that. And then, so after Pamela dies, is he now wandering? Is he now Pamela was taking?
He stays at there.
Right.
And I would also do something where if you took him out of Crystal Lake proper, he's not.
Yeah.
He's not functional.
Okay.
He's like linked to that cursed land.
Is there any supernatural element in it?
I think less is more. I don't. Yeah. I think I don't ever want to know the Joker's origin. I don't ever want to know Wolverine's origin. In real life, I don't ever want to know who shot Kennedy.
Yeah.
Some stories are far more interesting when you don't know. I think the downfall of genre storytelling is we start explaining everything and it becomes stories about why stories happened as opposed to being stories that move the story forward. Well, I don't need to know what the thread count is of Captain Kirk's shirt.
Right.
And if that's something that's going to bother you, then the storytelling has failed miserably because you're worried about stuff like that.
I never like it when they're trying to explain the villain.
Yeah.
Because that just takes away everything you just said. It's like, I don't need to know that. I don't need to know the Joker origin story. Well, I guess we're going to now with Joaquin Phoenix.
It's a version of the story.
A version, yeah, which is fine. But when it comes to like explaining why, there was a script out there for Friday the 13th in particular where, and I'm wondering if you read this.
I read a bunch of them.
Yeah, it was, I want to say it was the writer of Prisoners, that, but I cannot be sure. But the villains, there were 3 of them, the dad, the mom, and Jason. All in the same movie. And by the end of the movie, Jason comes in fully formed and was like he was there all along. It was just muddled. And I always say it's like, this is a campfire story.
Well, that was like the Rob Zombie Halloween.
Which is why I hate it so much.
Michael Myers is scary because he's the kid of the real estate agent and his wife down the street who has who plays Little League.
Yeah.
If he's white trash and his parents are monsters and he's abused, of course he's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
But what's scary is when there's no explanation.
There's no reason.
Why is this person evil? We have no idea. That's terrifying.
Yeah. What do you think of 2018's Halloween? You didn't like it?
No. No. I love the score. I think it's the best music Carpenter's done maybe since the original Halloween.
Sure.
I don't think the movie makes a lick of sense.
No.
Jamie Lee Curtis works her butt off. If the conceit of the movie is that Michael's coming after her, why does he kill 18 people before, just randomly? What I thought it was going to be before I
he was
saw
steered in that direction.
I
The
know,
doctor kind of pointed
well,
him.
the doctor being a villain, I think, is lazy and uninteresting.
You know what? It almost got me. When it happened, I went, oh no. And then I just fucking went with it. I loved it.
I hated it, and there's some vague homophobia in the murder of that kid in the beginning when he's like the kid wants to take dance classes instead of go hunting.
Oh, yeah.
That felt
did you?
unnecessarily.
Oh, really?
And I don't think it was necessarily conscious, but it was.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, I don't like that.
Oh.
Like what I was hoping for, and not knowing anything, and what I was hoping for from the original trailers was, Laurie has spent 40 years cutting herself off from the outside world.
Yeah.
I thought Michael was going to escape, and he doesn't give a shit about her. And she just realizes, oh, I've been living my life. This was a random act of violence. Because if you're getting rid of the brother-sister thing, lean into random.
Yeah.
She survived. He doesn't think about her. He's a killing machine.
So she goes maybe looking for
you
him.
flip it. She becomes his Mike. She becomes Michael Myers. She becomes Ahab going after him, and he doesn't know who the heck she is because he's just a killing machine. That's what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because the script does Jamie Lee Curtis no favors. She's either super confident or a super wreck.
Weird. Yeah.
With back and forth.
Yeah.
And I know, it's super successful and there'll be a sequel. I wish we could do one of these movies that just ended it.
Yeah.
Because the first Halloween movie is arguably one of the scariest, best horror films ever made.
It's my favorite horror film of all time. Yeah.
It's right up there for me.
Yeah. It just I thought there was a continuation of the first movie for me, it's like, is there pure evil? And that's Michael Myers, right? And he's the shape. And even John Carpenter, Deborah Hill, they write it in there. It's the shape. He's not known as Michael.
Yeah.
I love that. The Boogeyman, as a matter of fact, it was. And then this movie was, okay, is that for real? Let's try to put human into it.
But if it's humanity, he's 70 years old.
Yes.
And he's survived multiple gunshots.
So
he's been in an institution where he doesn't get to exercise.
Sure. Yeah. The idea of them trying to say, yeah, I know. And for me, all out the window. It got me. And I just loved it.
That's great, and I'm glad it made money. And I love that. I love that franchise. I love that original movie. It just felt to me like there were glimmers of greatness, like when she falls off the balcony and Michael looks and she's not there.
Yeah,
great. But it just felt like, where were cell phones? Why were kids still on the street? There would be an Amber Alert saying, "Get to your home."
Yeah,
I wanted more of her running down the street, like Dr. Loomis in the first one, get inside.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see the reaction.
Yeah.
It felt too small. It was too focused on that family.
I agree with you on that, because I think it's like all of a sudden he's just walking in the middle of kids in Halloween, and that would have never happened. Yeah, we would have gotten this. We've got to get in the house. You're going to be ready for this guy.
The National Guard would have been called out.
Yes, absolutely. And, I was more invested in, I think what the story was really trying to do was put there was that through line that was like, say something, Michael, say something. They wanted to put a human emotion in him. They wanted, if he says something, if Michael Myers finally goes, hey, fuck you, or whatever he says. Rosebud. He would have been human right then and there, and he doesn't do it. So it was an interesting experiment, but I'm with you. I have no idea.
But humanizing Michael Myers doesn't make any sense. It's like trying to humanize Charles Manson.
And I think they were doing it
humanizing
here.
makes normal, and I don't want to empathize with Michael Myers.
No, I know. And that's what I feel is the point.
Michael Myers just is.
But it was that movie trying to humanize him for the audience on the outside.
Sure.
It's like, we're going to try to make him speak. So that will humanize him. And that's why they are podcasters, true crime podcasters. Everybody's fascinated with this kind of thing.
If everyone was as fascinated, if it was Making a Murderer, and we're in a world where there's a Making a Murderer about Michael Myers, when he escapes, the media is going to be in the town.
Crazy.
Because once again, if you're going to set up this wider scope, you have to follow through with the reality, the rules of the world you're setting up. It doesn't have to be real world, but there needs to be a consistency of rules in there. Yeah. And for me,
some of the rules were a little inconsistent.
For me, you either lean into the stupidity or you really try for something else, and it's why I enjoy Halloween too, because it's ridiculous. Apparently, the only thing that people die of in Haddonfield is murder. Yeah, because that hospital is empty.
It's completely empty.
The lifespan there is you live to be 100 unless you're a teenager, then you get murdered.
You get murdered
but the movie's just gleeful in its sort of stupidity. It's just and
which is, I think, why 2018 landed with me.
And I really wanted to love 2018.
Yeah.
I
get it.
really, really wanted to love it. I think it's competently made, but there's stuff in it for me that just drives me crazy. The two deputies talking about their banh mi sandwiches.
You didn't like
That
that?
felt like a scene that Danny McBride had from
I will say,
vice principals that he just put in there. I was like, I don't care about these people. There's no reason to care about these. It was like the Russian family in Justice League. I don't care about them. And if your movie's over 2 hours, don't waste. Trim that fat and put in more scenes with Lori. Put in a scene with Lori talking to her granddaughter where she says, "Grandma, what really happened?"
Yeah.
Show the emotional stuff, because those were the scenes that had the resonance for me.
Yeah.
The scene at dinner. I guess it was a birthday dinner or an anniversary dinner,
and she
shows up and she just doesn't have. That was the stuff that was interesting to me. Lean into that. It just felt like there were a lot of notes given in that movie.
I get it. I can agree with some, and some landed with me that didn't land with you.
But you know what? It made $300 million worldwide. Hopefully, it will give us something more than just found footage movies, and it'll hopefully.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm kind of looking at you and hoping that Friday 13th can maybe do something, take a page out.
LeBron James has the film rights to that right now, and he is a fellow Clevelander.
Yeah.
And I believe we're repped at the same agency, so I'm going to start nudging around saying, let me just pitch this to LeBron.
Yes,
let me pitch it to him.
Please do. Pitch the Pamela one, okay? Because I love that, and I think that's your Friday 13th. That's their reboot.
The totally nerdy one I want to do that could never be done, but would be a great comic book if the rights were available. I want to do 10 Little Indians, the Agatha Christie story.
Yeah.
With the
I was just given that book. That's interesting.
It's
I
great.
got to read it.
With the survivors of the first 7 movies.
I love that.
So you get all the survivors get invitations to this island, and they all start getting killed.
Tommy Jarvis.
Tommy, Tina the psychic.
Yes.
Pam, Reggie the Reckless. The
Reggie the Reckless, right?
Ginny from Part 2.
Yep, Ginny.
All those people.
Yeah, Part 3. Part 4 is Tommy. Part 5 is Reggie.
What's her name? The girl.
Part 5?
Part 3.
Part 3 is, I can't remember her name. Yeah. The guy lives too. No, he dies.
No, he gets his head popped open.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you find out that the guy, you think it's a misdirection. You think it's Jason killing these people, but it's actually the redheaded guy from Part 2. Because a lot of the counselors leave and go out to that bar.
Yeah.
And they don't come back. And that redheaded guy, what my take would be that he was trying to become a stand-up comic.
Oh my
And everyone
God.
knew that he survived Camp Crystal Lake, so no one would go see him. They'd always ask about that.
Yeah.
And he got so furious that he was.
Was he dressing up as Jason?
Yeah, he was doing this thing where he was filming it all. He had cameras. It was sort of
man.
The Most Dangerous Game meets
Right.
that. And then Jason actually shows up.
I want this one.
And the end of the movie would be Jason versus Tina from Part 7, the psychic, and Ginny from Part 2.
I love this. And Tommy's dead.
Tommy sacrifices himself.
Okay, Tommy sacrifices himself. I can't say I don't want this movie. I want both. And I want a new reinvention of the series that I think you have a good grasp on. Then you set up Friday the 13th Part 2. It's Jason. You're kind of following along.
He should be like Swamp Thing.
Yes.
He should be this elemental thing that is attached to that part of that land.
Yeah.
Where you could bring in that there was a massive Indian massacre there or some bad stuff happened there, and he's this sort of manifestation of it.
Embrace the title, Friday the 13th. So if it's with Jason there, start with Pamela, like your original idea there is. Go into that. Yeah, maybe there's something. It's like bad luck just befalls Crystal Lake.
Yeah.
We don't really know why, but I always go to this. It's a campfire story. That's my favorite thing about the Friday the 13th movies.
The first two especially.
They're sitting around.
They smell like campfires.
Yes.
They smell like mildew and pea-stained mattresses.
And
it just feels like camp.
And it's that idea because I went to camp in the forest just like Friday the 13th. They sit around the campfire and they tell a story about a boy that drowned. And then in the second one, even that little nod to Part 2, it's like she was killed and I guess but we hear that the kid is still out there somewhere. Start there.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to do. You don't need to reinvent it. You don't need to make him connected somehow or Jason has feelings or whatever it may be that they're trying to break down with the character. Just old-fashioned, have fun, have a few movies, and then let's do your idea, the 7. Why not?
Who knows? Everything gets remade these days. So.
Oh my God! Well, Marc Andreyko, it was wonderful having you on the show.
Thank you.
Are
Thanks.
there anything that you want to plug that you're working on right now?
I'm writing Supergirl right now, and it spins out of what Brian Bendis has been doing with Man of Steel and Superman in Action. So we're going to be crossing back over with that. It's Supergirl going through space with Krypto, trying to figure out if the destruction of Krypton story, what really happened. I have another DC project that I can't talk about that will be something I've wanted to do for a long time that is in production right now. We don't have a release date for it yet. And then, the film, the TV, you know what it is in Los Angeles, going out and spinning plates and hoping one doesn't break.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. If we'll all be spinning plates together. So, well, it's been a pleasure talking
Thanks
to
for
you.
having me,
This
man.
is so awesome. Thank you very much. Where can they find you on Twitter?
At Marc Andreyko, and then I'm on Facebook. And if you don't like politics and bleeding heart liberals, please don't follow me.
Yeah, no. I like how you say what you mean, and like you said, you'll say it right to his face, too. You're one of the great followers. You're one of the great people that I know. Thank you again, Marc Andreyko. I'm at Reilly Around. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. This has been episode, 29 of the Reilly Roundtable. Thanks to my executive producers, Courtney Rose, Dylan Steiner, Kyle Gerbrandt, Zach Anderson, Dave Ham, and Timur Buddha. You guys are all Patreon supporters who get the executive producer credit. Thank you so much. If you want to contribute, the Reilly Roundtable, it's patreon.com/Reilly Roundtable. So that'll do it on this episode. Please like and share and subscribe and do all that stuff that you know what to do. It's the Reilly Roundtable. It drops every Thursday on the One-on-One, the Christian Harloff Podcast One feed. Subscribe there. Tell us how we're doing. And for me and Marc Andreyko, see you next week. Bye-bye.